Isolation brings fear. We human beings are creatures of little faith. We isolate ourselves from God, from the roots of our being, and we are so ready to see on all sides a hostile and praying world that we are constantly going about our daily tasks, affirming our faith in disease, disaster, poverty, failure, and loneliness. Yet the reins of our destiny are in our very own hands. Yet the reins of our destinies are in our very own hands, our very own hands. All things good and evil have their beginnings in faith. And as you believe, so shall it be done unto you. We shall have our beliefs anyway. Why not make them beliefs in good and the fine ends of man, in abundance and health, and vigor and integrity? Let us use the word faith to mean the overcoming of negative thought. Let us use the word delusion to mean belief in negative circumstance and negative thinking. Be of good cheer, said Jesus. I have overcome the world. He had overcome all things by faith only. This is the lesson he left us, the most magnificent teaching in the history of mankind. Let us refuse to accept delusion. Let us refuse to accept delusion. Let us take up faith like a sword and by using it overcome all things. The subconscious mind then turns into physical reality, each of our beliefs. If we find luck, limitation, excuse me, I'm sorry. If we find lack, limitation, disease, and failure in our lives, we can be very sure that our own convictions have brought them. It seems strange, most of us find it so much easier to attach our beliefs to negative things rather than positive, but there's no doubt but what this is mankind's tendency. Man isolates himself from God, from his sense of unity with the infinite intelligence, then feeling himself a small and lonely animal in a vast universe, he supposes that the responsibility for all things in his life depends upon his own physical action. The moment any one of his physical actions is stopped, he sees in this defeat, the symbol of a bigger future defeat, and he feels about him a hostile world aimed only at stopping his each desire. He sees in his smallness his own inadequacy and can forecast nothing for himself but those very fates that he fears. Thus he orders an existence, the very opposite of that which he truly desires, becoming convinced of failure, disease, poverty, loneliness, and suffering. He is likely to undergo all of them while their opposites seem as unattainable as stars. Yet the truth is that these unattainable opposites might have come to him with the same ease as their bad counterparts had he only exercised his faith in the right direction. Power through union. No man can consistently exercise faith in all aspects of his life without the secure knowledge that God is with him every minute of every day, every second, every moment. Unless you are willing to give up your problems and turn them over to God, you will find that you are making very poor solutions of them indeed, for you will feel your own inadequacy at every turn in the road and will shortly be projecting more failure than success into the subconscious mind. Make your mind up right now that there isn't the slightest use trying to do anything by yourself. You just aren't big enough, and that is the plain truth of the matter. The millions of facts and circumstances beyond your scope make of you a microbe on the face of the earth the moment you isolate yourself from the subconscious mind and say, I, all by myself, will do this thing. The very first apparent thing you will discover is that you don't know enough. The first very apparent thing you will discover is that you don't know enough. The second is that you will find yourself facing gigantic forces over which you have no control and against which you have no weapon. Defeat in every undertaking is then certain, and the only end is to be reduced to a groveling, whining, complaining, fear-ridden speck. But join forces with the subconscious mind, and the entire universe speeds to answer your every need. Not without cause did Jesus refer to the subconscious mind as the Father who dwelleth within me. For indeed, this wise and omnipotent Father excuse me, knows of your every need before you voice it, and may effect an instantaneous manifestation in your life of whatever it is you are convinced of. The subconscious mind contains the knowledge of all ways and means and times, and you may rest your problem there with the surety that it will be answered with perfection. Do not keep examining the pot to see if the water is boiling. Do not keep examining the pot to see if the water is boiling. Do not keep examining the pot to see if the water is boiling. Basically, what that means is once you put your faith in God, once you give God your problems and your issues, don't even think anymore about it. Think about something else. Think about just being grateful of whatever it may be. There's so many ways that I know that I can find to be grateful, and that's what I'm focusing on. You don't have to double check God. Don't make up your mind that your path should lead in a certain direction and then be disturbed because you find it leading elsewhere. Know that your every step is unerringly guided on a perfect route to your destination. Whatever you consider to be a side road is not a side road at all, but the best of all possible paths. Hold fast and faithfully to your conviction. Hold fast and faithfully to your conviction. Hold fast and faithfully. The perfect partner. He who takes up his life in full knowledge of his partnership with God will find splendor in everything he touches. He will see an ordered universe rushing to do his bidding. He will see the design of all things fitted to his every need. He will know that the senior partner is the one who carries out every decision, an infallible executive who never makes a mistake. He will begin to see himself as a beloved son who needs only ask and it shall be given, who needs only knock and it shall be opened. He will make each of his decisions clear and without contradiction, and he will hold to them with complete confidence until they have arrived in his world in answer to his call. He will know of his Father's tireless energy and unbinded goodwill, but he will respectfully refuse to tax them by contradicting himself or facilitating. He will not, for example, say, I'm going to be successful, and then a few hours or days later say, I'm not going to be successful. He will not say, do, don't, start, stop, give, withhold. He will have the courage and faith of his convictions and will reject all else until his desire becomes manifest in his life. Thus it is that he will achieve perfect faith, for he will know that all things rest with a power greater than he, that his image and conviction must become real in his life, for that is the law of the living and the law of attraction. And his sense of oneness with God, he will never be alone, and all the power of the universe will dwell within him. He will no longer have to fight for faith. Faith will be as natural as breathing. He will no longer have to fight for faith. Faith will be as natural as breathing. He will no longer have to fight for faith. Faith will be as natural as breathing. Circumstance versus faith. But in the meantime, short of having arrived at this conscious oneness with God, faith is the tool with which we may overcome the negative convictions of the conscious mind. The prompters, buried pain remembrances which attract evil and limitation, may also be disposed of by faith. Are you beset by lack of money? Then have faith that money will be yours. Are you ill? Then have faith that you will be well. Are you lonely? Then have faith that love and companionship even now are coming your way. Do you think you have failed at your heart's desire? Then have faith that you are following the path to its attainment. Act as if it were impossible to fail. Act as if it were impossible to fail. Act as if it is impossible to fail. Know with Jesus of Nazareth that all things are possible to him who believes. Know with Jesus of Nazareth that all things are possible to him who believes. All things are possible to him who believes. Because our conscious minds keep insisting that the physical world around us is final reality, we must use faith to regain our spiritual values. Our conscious minds accept every negative circumstance of our lives and are forever assuring us that these circumstances control us instead of the opposite. We may awake to a beautiful morning, arise from bed full of faith and energy. This feeling may see us through breakfast and be with us on our way to work. Then a driver lurches his car in front of us in traffic. We slam on the brakes with our hearts in our mouths, and we may say something as, "You stupid fool," we say, maybe out loud, certainly to ourselves, and now we are irritated. The day is not so bright. We don't feel quite as good. We start thinking about the boss and the calling down he gave us the other day. Suddenly it seems quite apparent that the boss is out to make our life miserable. We walk into the office with a chip on our shoulder. Shortly we may be in an argument. We don't like the job anymore. It's underpaid. Nobody appreciates us. Fate seems to conspire to keep us from attaining success, and so it goes. He who would use faith must use it to rise above negative circumstance, and he must never fall victim to that which goes on around him. Refuse to be trapped into believing that the cause of anything exists on the physical plane. Have complete confidence in the fact that first cause is mental, and first cause, once set in motion, must inevitably manifest itself in the physical world. Do not deny negative circumstance. Simply have faith in what you believe and refuse to accept the negative circumstances final. So that's what I'm getting out of this. In other words, if something is happening, acknowledge that whatever is happening is not what you would like to have happen. But as this is going on, in your final understanding of what's going on, always focus on the positive and know that that circumstance is not final. This is the proper use of faith, for faith will overcome the deluded convictions of the conscious mind, build habits of positive thinking, which is the first step on the road to power. Positive thinking. Faith is nothing other than a sustained effort to impart to the subconscious mind or the universal subconscious mind that thought which you wish to be manifested in your experience. Let me say that again. Faith is nothing other than a sustained effort to impart to the universal subconscious mind that thought which you wish to be manifested in your experience. Faith means thinking the one thing and not thinking of its opposite. Faith means refusing to accept any negative circumstance or to entertain any negative thought. Faith means complete reliance and trust in the power and goodness of God, and absolute trust that whatever you conceive with conviction will be returned to you in your life. Faith means complete reliance and faith in the power and goodness of God and absolute trust that whatever you conceive with conviction will be returned to you in this world. Faith means complete reliance and trust in the power and goodness of God and absolute trust that whatever you conceive with conviction will be returned to you in this world. There is no end to the power of positive thinking. He who banishes negative thoughts from his mind is caught up in the entire expanding power of the universe. Yet it is a difficult thing to do. So involved are we in our habits of negative thinking, so directed as automatons by our buried pain remembrances, the prompters. A man may have in his mind all the knowledge that exists in our libraries, but unless he becomes a positive thinker, he will meet with nothing but failure in his life. He does not want failure. Who does? Who wants to be sick, poor, lonely, unsuccessful? A man may even acknowledge that his own negative thinking is attracting negative circumstance to him. Yet, despite his efforts, he seems caught up in a habit of thought that will not release him. He may go for hours, even days, fighting off every mood of depression, turning his mind away from every negative idea. Then, of a sudden, something, usually a small thing, a dripping faucet, a unkind word, will set him off, and he surrenders to morbidity and his accustomed habits of negative, or should I say negation, much as a chronic individual who does something that is unwise. He wallows in futility, actually seems to enjoy it, but he takes a kind of masochistic satisfaction from being able to state to himself that the whole world is against him and nobody appreciates him and he never had a chance, and fate conspires daily to do him a dirty trick. He finds an ache in his back. He rediscovers his indigestion, develops sick headaches from tension. His nerves will not let him sleep. But at the end of the day, you can come out of all that, and that is giving your heart and your mind to God and recognizing that God will do the rest, and focusing on understanding that there's a power that supports you when you are very mindful. How can I say, like I was speaking about earlier in some other videos, uh, what is called a mental diet. For 2 days, you write down every thought that comes in your mind that is negative, just to make note of how many negative thoughts that we have just in 48 hours. So this will make it mindful in what you're supposed to be doing, along with your daily meditations on the positive, and remaining constantly in prayer. Fear and delusion, negative faith. Oh, but if it were real easy, anyone could do it. If a person knew that all he had to do was think positive thoughts for 24 hours and the next day he would have a fine job, lots of money, a happy home, prestige, and achievement, he certainly would do it then, wouldn't he? But when it takes longer than that, he gives up the ghost, giving little or no heed to the fact that he's still working with the exact same factors, except now he's using his faith in the opposite direction, in the direction of evil, limitation, lack, and disease. So the thing is to flip it. A strange situation has evolved, a situation in which people today find it effortless to use faith to attract evil, in which they find it exceedingly hard to use faith for good. Certainly, this is a paradox. Certainly, in the ages of man's evolution, it is a temporary thing, but that doesn't dissolve its tragic importance to those who face the problem now. It seems easy for us to have faith in negative things because we have built up habits of negative thinking. So the key is to build up the habit of positive thinking constantly. And when you don't feel like you can do that, that's when you give it to God again. And you ask for God to help you. And then when you're really on point, you ask for God to help you anyway because you know that you need Him. These habits of negative thinking are as difficult to break as any habit which is as long seated, usually 30 to 50 years with most of us. But if we know that positive thinking attracts good and negative thinking attracts evil, then certainly we are all in accord that the primary immediate aim is to do away with negative thinking. In other words, break the habit. It is no more difficult to break than any habit, and what's broken need never bother you again, for you will then know its pitfalls and will not be tempted. If we know that positive thinking attracts good and negative thinking attracts evil, then certainly we are all in accord that the primary immediate aim is to do away with negative thinking. In other words, break the habit. It is no more difficult to break than any habit, and once broken need never bother you again, for you will then know its pitfalls and will not be tempted. If we know that positive thinking attracts good and negative thinking attracts evil, then certainly we are all in accord that the primary immediate aim is to do away with negative thinking. In other words, break the habit. It is no more difficult to break than any habit, and once broken need never bother you again, for you will then know its pitfalls and will not be tempted. One of the things I'm concerned about, I was talking to a good associate of mine, and we were talking about this associate and I, we were talking about this person was talking about like 4 or 5 years and doing whatever that they were doing. And I felt that part of my negative thinking was a circumstance that being born into, and where your sense of self and your sense of value and who you are, and that what you think is important and that you can contribute can be removed at a very early age. So that goes straight to the subconscious mind. And so the conscious mind acts out of what's stored in the subconscious, especially if it's negative. And especially if there's not a lot of positivity around you. So for me, this is truly beneficial for me because I can look at it and live it right now and also teach it later because I'm literally going through it right now. And just looking at my past, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about the fact that this person had said, they didn't think they was going to live past 18. And in my case, I didn't believe I was going to live past 17. But I remember an incident when I was about 3 years old that I just knew that I was going to die basically. And without bringing it up, it's more like trying to like where you reach that point where you really understand where certain memories, uh, how to work at how to work at saving the good memories and getting rid of the bad memories. So that's still a process in action in terms of why this information is so important to me. The bad habit. It is often a very fantastic thing to observe a man accept temporarily the premise that positive thinking can change his life, then discard this transcendent truth as unworkable after the most perfunctory trial. He might, for instance, decide today to alter his thinking and approach to life. He might actually change his outlook and attitudes very considerably for a period of a week or even a month. If at the end of that time, however, he has not been witness to a miracle, he all too often raises his hands up in despair and shouts, "It doesn't work," and falls immediately into his former habits of thinking. A lifetime of negative thinking will not be undone in a week. A lifetime of negative thinking will not be undone in a week. A lifetime of negative thinking will not be done in a week. Don't for a moment fall into the trap of thinking that unless results are immediate, you are on the wrong track. It is a case of faith or fear. And fear is only the negative use of faith. Wow. Mm. Fear is only the negative use of faith. Fear is only the negative use of faith. No matter how you choose to think, you are calling into existence those very things you believe in. The choice then is simple, good or evil. There is in this life no alternative to faith other than fear and evil. No sane person understanding this will dally with his choice. But how to undo the habit?